Ron Howard, usually the steady voice in the storm, has always carried himself with calm dignity, restraint, and kindness. Yet the moment he was asked about the industry that raised him, something in his expression shifted. He quietly remarked once that few would believe what old Hollywood icons did once the lights went out. For Howard, Hollywood's so-called golden age was anything but luminous. He saw it as a system built on silence, cruelty, and exploitation. In that world, fame excused nearly any act. The same stars who shaped America's fantasies were destroying lives behind closed doors, and now Howard is willing to reveal who they were. Errol Flynn, forever smiling yet hiding a darker nature, stood at the center of that corruption. Long before Bond or Sparrow, Flynn was the original swashbuckling idol, all charm and reckless allure. On screen, he played the perfect hero. Off-screen, he veered far closer to a predator. After arriving in Hollywood in the 1930s, his role in Captain Blood turned him into an overnight phenomenon. Studios quickly built their success around his magnetism, masking a man driven by arrogance and addiction. By 1942, his reputation had curdled. Two teenagers, Peggy Satterlee and Betty Hansen, accused him of statutory rape, launching a sensational national trial. Newspapers devoured every detail, and the country split over whether to believe the charges. Flynn treated the courtroom like a stage, dismissing the accusations with a smirk, as if fame made him untouchable. Warner Brothers assembled elite attorneys, crowds lined the courthouse, and studio executives quietly pushed witnesses out of sight. Though acquitted, he descended further. Decades later, private letters revealed in 1978 showed him mocking his victims and boasting about his behavior. Ron Howard has said that reading about that trial marked a moment when he realized Hollywood protected its monsters as long as they entertained. To the outside world, Flynn stayed a roguish icon. Inside Hollywood, he became a warning. Addiction, financial collapse, and self-destruction consumed him. By 1959, just 50 years old, he died in Vancouver after years of excess. His autopsy cited heart failure, cirrhosis, and ulcers, though Howard believed the real cause was simply a lifetime of taking without giving. His legacy became an emblem of Hollywood's rot, proof that charm can hide cruelty, and that fame ultimately spares no one. Kirk Douglas, known for never backing down, embodied another face of that darkness. To Howard, Douglas represented Hollywood's deepest contradiction, a man who preached justice on screen while inflicting fear off it. Born Izer Danielovich in 1916, he clawed his way from poverty through sheer force. By the time Spartacus crowned him a global star, he possessed unparalleled fame, wealth, and authority. Yet many colleagues recalled someone fueled by a relentless, volatile temper. Crew members described him as impossible to satisfy, prone to sudden eruptions that left people shaken. Actress Deborah Paget once said Douglas didn't just want to dominate the scene, he wanted to dominate everyone inside it. As Howard studied his early films, he later admitted seeing a rage under that smile, the kind that eats a person alive. That inner fury followed Douglas throughout his career. Rumors of his treatment of women have lingered for decades, particularly claims linking him to the 1950s rape of 16-year-old Natalie Wood, a story revived by her sister Lana in a 2018 memoir. Douglas was never charged, and the allegation vanished under the same machinery of silence protecting powerful men of that era. Even after his death in 2020 at 103, the controversy returned as part of a broader cultural reckoning. On set, he could inspire brilliance while instilling fear. Director Stanley Kubrick once called him the most driven man he'd ever worked with and the hardest to control. Howard eventually concluded that Douglas's real legacy wasn't his talent, but the power he wielded. He behaved as though the rules were optional for him, and Hollywood treated him accordingly. When he accepted an honorary Oscar in 1996, many saw a man seeking forgiveness. Howard saw something different. The final bow of someone who had spent his career outrunning his own demons. Beneath the applause, he believed, lay a truth the industry avoided admitting. Some legends built greatness on a foundation of fear.
Faye Dunaway, Hollywood's coldest storm, embodied cruelty wrapped in beauty. If Flynn symbolized corruption and Douglas embodied rage, Dunaway represented a quieter brutality. Howard believed she proved that Hollywood's darkness didn't always involve violence. Sometimes it thrived through humiliation, control, and ego. Born in 1941 in Bascom, Florida, Dunaway rocketed to fame. From Bonnie and Clyde to Chinatown, she appeared untouchable, elegant, magnetic, iconic. Yet behind the acclaim, rumors of her cruelty spread quickly. Crew members talked about her temper, her relentless demands, and her treatment of assistants as disposable. Her mommy dearest co-star, Rutanya Alda, said the set felt charged with fear, everyone bracing for her next eruption. While portraying Joan Crawford, a figure associated with abuse, Dunaway allegedly replicated similar behavior behind the scenes. Director Frank Perry reportedly considered quitting over her outbursts. She hurled objects, screamed at artists, and refused to work unless lighting made her appear flawless. Years later, Howard cited her as a warning about what happens when an actor's desire for control mutates into emotional destruction. The accounts didn't stop with that film. On The Wicked Lady, Dunaway allegedly slapped a cameraman and spat on a crew member. During Don Juan DeMarco, she was said to have berated assistants so harshly production paused. Her former manager, Jay Bernstein, famously remarked that Dunaway didn't just portray divas, she embodied them. By the 2000s, her long-standing reputation finally caught up to her. Hollywood no longer reached out. Directors turned her away, saying she was too difficult to manage. After losing her role in a 2011 Broadway revival of Tea at 5, Dunaway shifted the blame outward. When a journalist pressed Ron Howard about her legacy, he answered with polite caution that still carried sting. He believed she chased perfection to the point of losing compassion. Dunaway's decline didn't happen abruptly. It unfolded slowly. The actress who once ruled the industry ended up secluded, rarely welcomed even at screenings honoring her work. To Howard, she represented the cost of cruelty, proof that extraordinary talent without empathy eventually collapses on itself. People mention power, he once remarked, but in Hollywood, without grace, that power corrodes into poison. John Wayne, the towering force of the West. Few figures dominated the industry like Wayne. For countless fans, he embodied the American ideal, the bold cowboy, the loyal soldier, the classic tough man. Yet for Ron Howard, who first watched him on black and white TV, the truth behind that persona seemed far darker. Howard later said that once he learned more about Wayne, the hero image vanished. Instead, he saw a man projecting patriotism like a costume. Born Marion Morrison in Iowa in 1907, Wayne climbed through the studio system by presenting himself as the model of rugged masculinity. By the 1950s, he had become not just an actor, but a national symbol. He treated dissent as weakness and viewed progress as betrayal. On set, he maintained control through intimidation. Crew members who disappointed him were reportedly berated publicly. Actor Christopher Mitchum remembered, "When Duke was angry, the air froze. You either aligned with him or you left." Howard later described that kind of environment as the opposite of creativity. It was fear masquerading as order. Accounts from the era also describe Wayne speaking harshly to women, making derogatory remarks toward indigenous actors on Western sets, and dismissing black performers challenging stereotypes. His 1971 Playboy interview remains infamous. It documented him saying that Native Americans were wrongfully keeping land and claiming Black Americans were not yet prepared for full civic responsibility, along with insisting films needed men, not complainers.
Those comments resurfaced decades later, sparking renewed outrage and revealing a worldview rooted in prejudice. On The Searchers, Wayne and director John Ford argued over portraying Ethan Edwards, a racist former Confederate, as sympathetic. Ford resisted, Wayne pushed, and the final film showed both the character's brutality and the actor's intensity. Ron Howard, who studied the film during his USC years, said it was unsettling because the line between performance and person felt blurred. Even in declining health near the end of his life, Wayne never walked back his statements. He criticized changing times and blamed his growing isolation on cultural shifts. He died in 1979 at 72, still regarded by many as an American legend. But for filmmakers like Howard, Wayne's story became a warning. Authority built on prejudice doesn't mature into wisdom, it hardens into bitterness. The myth endured, Howard once noted, though the man beneath it never earned the legend. Roman Polanski, the exile marked by shame. To Ron Howard, Polanski's name represented the truth Hollywood never wanted to admit. Genius can exist alongside profound wrongdoing. I admired his films before I understood the person behind them, Howard once said. Then I realized talent doesn't excuse anything. Sometimes it conceals it. Polanski's rise was rapid. Born in Paris in 1933 to Polish parents and surviving the trauma of Nazi occupation, he seemed touched by tragedy from the start. His early films like Knife in the Water and Rosemary's Baby won him international acclaim for turning paranoia into high art. But the darkness within those films echoed something real. In March 1977, that image collapsed. Polanski was arrested for sexually assaulting 13-year-old Samantha Gamer during a photo session at Jack Nicholson's Los Angeles home. The evidence was strong. He pleaded guilty to unlawful sex with a minor. Before sentencing, he fled the United States and remained in France. Hollywood reacted bitterly and unevenly. Some condemned him, others defended him as a troubled genius. For Howard, then young in his career, that response was devastating. They talked about cinema while a child suffered, he said years later. Polanski's exile became one of the industry's most enduring moral failures. He continued directing abroad and even won an Oscar in 2003 for The Pianist, a moment Howard called surreal and deeply disturbing. As the Dolby Theater audience gave a standing ovation, Howard stayed seated. He thought of the girl who was 13 and what applause must feel like to her. Even decades later, the habit of separating brilliance from responsibility infuriated him. When Polanski won the César Award in 2020, many walked out in protest. To Howard, that moment showed justice arriving late yet still arriving. He believed the world had finally said what should have been said immediately, that a gifted filmmaker is not less accountable because he frames a shot well. Polanski remains in Europe, legally shielded but morally burdened. His name has become synonymous with contradiction and controversy. For Howard, Polanski represents everything toxic about Hollywood's old system, a structure that protects its artists while failing its victims. Hollywood forgives nearly anything, he once said bitterly, as long as the lighting looks good. Mickey Rooney, the smile that hid the truth. If Polanski embodied hypocrisy, Rooney represented the deceptive charm of old Hollywood, the notion that likability erased misconduct. For Howard, who grew up watching Rooney's sunny musicals late at night, learning about the troubled reality behind the persona came as a sharp shock. Once, Howard remarked that Rooney seemed like pure joy, though beneath that charm lived real torment. Beneath that grin lurked misery, And worse, he pushed it onto everyone around him. Born Joseph Ewell Jr. in 1920, Rooney became Hollywood's earliest child megastar. Before he reached adulthood, he had already become America's highest-paid performer. MGM rose to power on the strength of his cheerful image. Audiences embraced the wholesome kid who danced and sang into their hearts. Still, fame on that level twisted him fast. Throughout his life, he entered 8 marriages, betrayed partners constantly, burned through fortunes, and devastated those who cared for him. Ava Gardner, one of his ex-wives, once labeled him the smallest man with the largest ego she'd ever met. Behind the scenes, the shadows only grew worse. In 2011, his final wife, Jan Chamberlain, and her son faced accusations of isolating him and siphoning his finances. But long before that scandal, the harm he caused was already widely discussed. Co-stars often recalled him as unpredictable and harsh. Judy Garland, who shared her early career with him, admitted he could make her laugh and then tear her down moments later. Garland, crushed by studio pressure and personal turmoil, later hinted that Rooney, along with MGM, added to her suffering. By the 1960s, everything he'd built had fallen apart. He spiraled through addictions, bankruptcies, and constant controversy. In a 1979 interview, he claimed he had lived 1,000 different lives. Howard later reflected that Rooney lived each one entirely for himself. Even as an elderly man, he clung to resentment. He pointed fingers at studios, spouses, and even God for every downfall. When his life ended in 2014 at age 93, almost nothing remained of his fortune. His estate was valued under $20,000, and friends had to gather funds for a simple burial after his body went unclaimed. To Howard, Rooney's trajectory completed a grim pattern. It demonstrated that the smiles of the so-called golden age were only disguises. Rooney kept the world laughing while he crumbled inside, Howard observed. Perhaps the harshest truth is this: suffering can transform into performance so seamlessly that no one sees it happening. For Howard, these stories were never acts of vengeance. They served as reminders. That glamorous era was never precious metal. It was built on denial, exploitation, and ruined lives beneath glitter. And, as he once explained, the most terrifying figures aren't found in horror films. They're the ones fame protects from scrutiny. So tell me, of these 6 figures, which one stunned you the most? The predator, the tyrant, or the smiling deceiver? Share your thoughts in the comments.